What kind of regret are you most afraid of? The kind of regret where you've made a decision and it turned out to be the wrong one, and so you regret taking action in that way, or the kind of regret where actually you haven't taken any action, you haven't done something that you should have done. If you're an overthinker, it is almost certain that you replied that the first version scares you most. And this has to do with a particular type of shame that you are afraid of, maybe too afraid of, while you're not afraid enough of the other type of shame. So, as an aside, we are in the middle of a historic heat wave here in France, and I don't have any air conditioning, so that's why I'm dressed in the lightest gym clothes that I could find. So usually, overthinkers are more afraid of the regret of making a mistake than of letting an opportunity pass or not doing something that they should have done. And if this is you, part of it is just the fear of the objective negative consequences of making a mistake. But also it has to do with some kind of shame. And that shame comes from mainly two things. And one of them is that if you're making a mistake, if you take the wrong decision, it endangers your identity as a smart person. So overthinkers are often smart people, or at the very least, they want to think of themselves as smart. And the thing is, if you make a mistake and you don't have the right mindset, you can feel like you made mistakes because you were not smart enough. And so you are afraid of making the wrong decision, partly because if you make the wrong decision, that could mean that you're not as smart as you thought you were. And so this is a problem of fixed mindset versus growth mindset. So this is a topic in and of itself, and I won't address it for too long in this video. But basically, in that case, you have a fixed mindset. So you're afraid of making the wrong decision because to you, you have a fixed idea of your intelligence. And any mistakes, any wrong decision that you make, it endangers, it puts into jeopardy your view of your own intelligence. And so anytime you make the right decision, it's just confirmation that you are as smart as you are. But anytime you make the wrong decision, it feels like, oh God, what if I'm not that smart? And if that's your mindset, I'm sorry to say, this has to go. You need to change your mindset. And this is not the video to go full into why and how, but this is actually stupid. If you're too afraid of making mistakes, it doesn't make you smarter. It actually makes you dumber because, or at the very least, it prevents you from growing smarter. It's only from learning that you get smarter, and learning involves sometimes trying and making mistakes and learning from it. So you should have a growth mindset where if you make a mistake, it's an opportunity for learning. It's not a danger to your identity. And also, you shouldn't care so much about being smart in the first place. So the second source of shame that you are afraid of when you are afraid of doing something or trying something because you don't want to feel that shame, and that would lead to regret, and this would be too painful. The second main reason for that is that you fear the shame of not having done enough before you made the decision. And so, isolated, the shame of not having done enough is a healthy shame, and we'll get back to it. It's just you're using the wrong version of it, because in your case, the shame that you would feel if you did something and it turned out to have the wrong outcome, the shame you would feel for not having done enough would equate to the shame of not having done enough thinking. And this is where your problem lies. Because this would be a legitimate concern, this would be a legitimate shame if thinking were really your bottleneck. For some people it is. Some people do not think through their own actions enough. But if you're an overthinker, almost by definition, it's not your problem. It's thinking is not your bottleneck. So usually the reason you're not trying whatever you should be trying is not that you haven't thought through this enough. It has more to do, as I've spoken about elsewhere, with either your emotions or you thinking that thinking will get you an answer that it cannot give you. But either way, thinking is not the problem. You don't have a thinking problem. You have more than likely, like, let's say, a courage problem, for instance, or a problem for not wanting to do the effort and risk wasting your time and energy. And so the shame of not having done enough thinking in your case is not the right shame. What you should be ashamed of is ashamed of not trying. So again, the shame of not doing enough to get the outcomes you want is a healthy shame if it's the right kind of doing that you're trying to do. And so thinking is not the problem. The part where you don't actually do anything is the problem. So you should be less ashamed if you feel like you haven't done enough thinking, because usually that wasn't the problem. Okay? It wasn't about not thinking about it long enough. Usually your problem is that you do not do things that you should do, and you don't try things that you should try, even though, yes, you could fail. That is a possibility. But over the long run, it is better if you think properly about these things. In your case, especially as an overthinker, you will get better long-term outcomes by trying, as a general rule, even if you fail sometimes, than you will get by just keeping what you're doing, that is to say, thinking and not doing anything. And so your values are sort of upside down. You are afraid of being some kind of loser or an idiot who doesn't think things through. You are afraid of making a mistake. What you should be afraid of is being the guy or the girl who doesn't try enough, who doesn't do enough. Okay? There is value, there is self-esteem and self-respect to be had from trying. Try and change your mindset from a mindset of deriving worth, self-worth, from being smart about your decision and not making any mistakes, to a self-worth that comes from the fact that you are willing to try things. I am not telling you not to think. I'm telling you that thinking is not your bottleneck, and that you should try things even though you can fail. Like, even if you try and you fail, and provided that you've done a little bit of thinking, like the amount that is actually required, which is not usually the amount of thinking that you try to do, well, provided you're not acting foolishly, you should be proud of yourself. Even if it doesn't end well, you should be proud of yourself for trying. Okay? And so you need to change your values. And if you change your values about that, then you do not feel so shameful when you make a wrong decision, which means there's that little bit of fear that holds your hand when you're considering doing something, that little bit of fear that disappears. And that it's not the only fear that might be staying in your hand, but it's something that definitely is not useful. Okay? So get rid of that shame and that fear of that shame of not having thought through things enough. And instead, you should feel more fear of not being the person who tries. Okay? You should feel more fear of that, more fear and more shame about being that kind of person, so that you can actually try more. And so you should feel less regret for you should feel less regret for making some mistakes in your life, and a lot more regrets for all that you're not doing that you should be doing. So let me know in the comment if you agree with what I'm saying, if I'm making any sense. Let me know if you have some sort of counter arguments that you want to oppose me. Like, if you're an overthinker, you have a lot of yeah, but in your mind. Okay, so you can yeah, but me anytime you want. See you.